Welcome to our deep dive. Today it's into Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. This book, it came out of, well, those just unimaginable horrors of Nazi concentration camps.
Mm.
And it's a powerful look at logotherapy,
Oh, yeah.
Frankl's philosophy, right? All centered around finding meaning, even when, like, you're facing immense suffering.
That's right. Frankl, a Jewish Austrian psychologist, he was imprisoned in Auschwitz during World War II.
Oh, wow.
And instead of just, giving in to despair, he used his experiences to develop, well, a theory about how the human spirit can find purpose even in, like, the bleakest situations.
It's incredible to think that something so profound came from such a, like, dark chapter in human history.
Right.
So what exactly is logotherapy? How did Frankl, develop it?
So, while he was imprisoned, Frankl saw like these fellow prisoners going through distinct psychological stages.
No.
So initially there was shock,
Uh-huh.
just, complete disorientation at the brutal reality of the camps. They were stripped of their identities and faced with, like the constant threat of death.
Yeah, it's hard to even fathom what that must have been like.
I know.
How could anyone possibly, like, adapt to such horrific conditions?
Well, Frankl noted that a lot of them entered a stage of apathy,
Okay.
a kind of emotional numbness, right? Like their minds were shielding them from how bad it really was, their suffering.
Oh.
He tells this like chilling story about how cigarettes were used as currency in the camps, and the
Right.
prisoners who had lost hope would smoke their own cigarettes rather than trade them for food or favors, anything.
Seriously. Wow, that's both heartbreaking and fascinating.
Yeah.
It's like those cigarettes became a measure of their will to live.
Right.
If they still had, like, something to hope for, they'd hold on to those cigarettes as a
Yeah.
chance to barter for a better future.
Exactly. Frankl saw that those who clung to some kind of purpose, even in, these awful circumstances, were more likely to make it. This observation was central to logotherapy.
Yeah.
It wasn't about denying suffering, right?
No.
It was about discovering a reason to keep going, a meaning to their existence that wasn't just about survival.
This idea that the drive for meaning is, like, even stronger than the instinct for survival,
Right.
that's mind-blowing.
It is.
It makes you wonder, like, how did that play out for those who, didn't have anchors of hope,
Right.
like family or, like, a strong belief system?
Well, Frankl observed that some found meaning in acts of self-transcendence.
Oh.
They focusing on, like, helping others or maintaining their dignity or even finding beauty in the midst of all this ugliness.
Right.
They chose to respond to suffering by focusing on something bigger than themselves.
That's powerful.
It is.
So he realized that even in a concentration camp, people still had the power to choose, like, their attitude and how they responded.
Yes.
This is already making me rethink how I approach life's challenges.
Uh,
It's a powerful reminder that we're not simply victims of circumstance,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
We always have a choice in how we react and what we focus on.
We do.
But what about after they were liberated? Did those stages just disappear?
Well, not exactly. Frankl identified a third stage,
Okay.
freedom and ordeal.
Freedom and ordeal.
Yeah. This period was marked by a different kind of struggle.
Right.
Survivors were trying to reintegrate into a world that no longer felt familiar.
Right.
Many faced these feelings of depersonalization, kind of a sense of detachment from themselves
Oh, wow.
and their surrounding.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
After enduring such trauma, normal life must have felt anything but normal.
Right.
It's almost like the trauma didn't end with liberation, but continued in a new form.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are there any specific examples of this in the book?
Oh, yeah. Frankl shares this disturbing anecdote about a prisoner who, right before liberation, vowed to stain his hand with blood once he was free. This man, so consumed by rage and this desire for revenge, he hadn't even left the camp yet.
Yeah.
But his mind was already fixated on inflicting pain on others.
That's chilling.
Yeah.
It really highlights that profound and lasting psychological impact of those experiences.
Yeah.
Even freedom, it couldn't erase the scars left by the camps.
It underscores the need for a framework like logotherapy to help people rebuild their lives after trauma.
Right.
Logotherapy wasn't just about surviving. It was about rediscovering purpose, finding joy even, in the shadow of all that past suffering.
So we've established that this drive for meaning is powerful even in the most extreme situations.
Yes.
But how exactly does Frankl suggest we we go about finding this meaning in our own lives? Is it something we're just supposed to, like, stumble upon?
Not at all. Frankl outlines 3 specific paths to meaning:
Okay.
meaningful action, experiencing life's richness, and self-transcendence.
Okay, I'm definitely intrigued. Let's unpack these
Yeah.
paths. Wait, what does Frankl mean by meaningful action?
So meaningful action is all about engaging in work or deeds that, that give you a sense of accomplishment and worth.
Okay.
It's about contributing to something larger than yourself,
Ah,
whether it's through your job or creative pursuits or even acts of service.
yeah.
Frankl believed that aligning your actions with your values, that can give you a really deep sense of purpose.
So it's not just about, like, staying busy, right?
Yeah,
It's about doing something that truly resonates with you and makes a difference.
exactly. And it doesn't have to be some, grand world-changing endeavor.
Right.
Even small acts like caring for a loved one or volunteering in your community, it can be incredibly meaningful.
Right.
In fact, Frankl actually did an experiment where he encouraged depressed patients to find purpose through volunteer work.
Wait, seriously, that sounds almost too simple. Did it actually
It
help?
did for a lot of them. By shifting their focus, outward, they discovered this renewed sense of self-worth and purpose.
How?
It was like their sense of meaning became an antidote to their despair.
That's amazing. I had no idea. There was, like, scientific evidence supporting this idea.
There is.
It really highlights the power of engaging in something that goes beyond our own immediate needs.
Uh-huh. Mhm.
Okay, so meaningful action is about finding purpose in what we do.
Right.
What about the second path? Experiencing life's richness.
So this path is all about finding meaning in those simple joys of existence. Love, nature, art, beauty.
Okay.
It's about appreciating the world around us and cultivating a sense of wonder and gratitude for the everyday miracles we often take for granted.
I think a lot of us get caught up in, the hustle and bustle of life and forget to slow down and appreciate those moments.
I think so too.
Frankl himself, like, he found solace in nature,
He did.
even in the concentration camp.
Absolutely. He talks about finding beauty in a blade of grass or the changing seasons, even amidst the horrors of Auschwitz.
Wow.
And he also drew strength from, the memory of his wife.
Wow.
Her love was this source of meaning that sustained him through those dark times.
That's so beautiful and so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It shows that even in the most dire circumstances, love and beauty can still exist,
Right.
and it can be powerful sources of strength and resilience.
They are.
But, for many of us, those big sources of meaning, like romantic love or profound experiences in nature,
Yeah.
those feel, hard to come by sometimes.
That's true. But remember, these experiences don't require like grand gestures
Right.
or exotic travels. They can be found in the everyday moments of our lives.
Right.
It's a shift in perspective, a choice to cultivate a mindful awareness of the world around us,
Okay.
and to actively seek out the beauty that's already there. It could be something as simple as savoring a cup of coffee in the morning,
Right.
or noticing the way the light filters through the leaves on a tree,
Yeah.
or truly listening to a loved one share their day.
Those are great examples.
Yeah.
It's about training ourselves to appreciate what we often take for granted.
It is.
Okay, so we've got a meaningful action, engaging in purposeful activities,
Mm-hmm.
and experiencing life's richness, cultivating appreciation for those simple joys of existence.
Yes.
What about self-transcendence? That one's a bit trickier to wrap my head around.
It is.
Yeah.
This path is about finding meaning through suffering.
Oh, okay.
Not by, seeking it out, of course,
Right.
but by choosing our attitude and response when we're faced with unavoidable hardship.
Yeah, I think this is where Frankl's ideas can be both incredibly inspiring and also a bit challenging.
Yep.
It's easy to talk about finding meaning in good times,
Right.
but what about when we're facing, like, real pain or loss or adversity?
Well, that's the crux of Frankl's message.
Yeah.
He's not offering platitudes or easy answers.
Right.
He's saying that that even in the darkest of times, we still have that freedom to choose how we respond. And that freedom, it's what allows us to find meaning even in our suffering.
But how do we find meaning in suffering?
Yeah.
It seems almost counterintuitive.
It's not about, glorifying suffering or pretending it's not painful.
Right.
It's about recognizing that even in our struggles, there are opportunities for growth, compassion, connection. For example, imagine someone caring for a loved one with a terminal illness.
Yeah, that's an incredibly difficult situation.
It is.
Filled with pain and grief.
It is. But within that experience, there can also be, profound love, compassion, and a deepening of their bond.
Right.
They're finding a deeper meaning within that suffering, a way to transform the experience into something that contributes to their growth.
So it's not about denying the suffering, but about finding a deeper meaning within it.
Exactly. And that, I think is the essence of self-transcendence.
Okay.
It's about moving beyond our ego, our immediate needs, and finding a larger purpose in our suffering. It's about using our experiences, even the painful ones, to connect with something greater than ourselves.
This is really powerful stuff.
It is.
It's making me, think about my own challenges in a new light.
Mm-hmm.
I've always tried to avoid suffering,
right,
to push it away.
Yeah.
But maybe there's a different way to approach it.
Yeah.
A way to find some meaning, some growth, even in the midst of it.
That's the invitation Frankl's offering.
Yes.
To embrace the full spectrum of human experience.
Right.
The joys and the sorrows. And to find meaning even in the darkest of times.
Yeah. But it's important to remember, this isn't about passively accepting suffering.
No, not at all.
Right.
Frankl also provides concrete steps for actually achieving meaning.
Okay.
He calls them embracing tension, dissipating fear, and the freedom to choose.
Huh.
And they might surprise you.
All right, lay it on me.
Okay.
What's this about embracing tension?
Okay.
Don't we usually try to avoid tension in our lives?
They do, don't we? But Frankl argues that a certain level of tension is actually necessary for growth and direction.
Okay.
He contrasts this with the dangers of apathy and a purely tension-free existence.
So it's like without some level of challenge, we become, complacent, directionless.
Exactly. Think about it. When was the last time you felt truly alive?
Okay.
Truly engaged?
Right.
Wasn't it when you were like striving for something, working towards a goal, facing a challenge?
Yeah, I see your point. It's like that saying, smooth seas don't make skillful sailors.
Right.
We need some resistance to grow and evolve.
Precisely. Now, this doesn't mean that we should, go looking for unnecessary stress or drama.
Right.
But rather that we should recognize that a certain amount of tension is, it's natural and even healthy.
Right.
It's what gives our lives direction and purpose.
This is a real mind shift for me. I'm so used to thinking of tension as something negative, something to avoid.
All right.
But I can see how in the right context it can be a driving force for positive change.
Absolutely. Now, having said that, Frankl also recognizes that excessive fear that can be it can be paralyzing.
Right.
That's where his second step, dissipating fear, comes in.
Okay, this is making more sense now.
Okay.
So we embrace healthy tension, but we also need to manage our fears so they don't hold us back.
Exactly. And Frankl offers some pretty ingenious methods for doing just that.
Okay.
He talks about paradoxical intention and provisional existence.
Those sound fascinating. Tell me more about these fear busting techniques.
Well, paradoxical intention is this really cool concept where you confront your fear head on by humorously wishing for the very thing you fear.
Wait, that sounds counterintuitive.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah.
Sure. So Frankl had a patient who suffered from excessive sweating.
Okay.
So he told the patient to try to sweat as much as possible, to really focus on sweating profusely.
And that worked. Just telling the patient to do the thing they were afraid of.
Believe it or not, it often did. By taking away the fear of the symptom, that the symptom itself often subsided. It's like by embracing the fear,
you take away its power.
That's wild. It reminds me of that saying, What we resist persists.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about our provisional existence? What's that all about?
So provisional existence is about, mentally projecting yourself into the future, looking back on your current problems from a point of, well, a greater perspective.
Okay.
It's ab- about imagining yourself having overcome the challenges you're facing now.
So it's like taking a mental timeout, gaining some distance from the immediacy of your problem.
Precisely. Imagine you're stressed about an upcoming deadline.
Okay.
Now, fast forward a month, you've
Yeah.
got the deadline, and it's no longer a source of anxiety.
Right.
This technique helps you gain perspective on present worries
Yeah.
by seeing them, within a larger context, a longer timeline.
These are some seriously powerful tools for dealing with fear. I'm starting to see how all of this ties into the idea of finding meaning. Yeah.
It's about taking ownership of our experiences,
Right.
even the difficult ones.
Exactly. And that leads us to Frankl's third and final step, the freedom to choose.
Okay.
This step highlights this incredibly empowering message
Right.
that even in the most dire circumstances,
Yeah.
we still have the freedom to choose our attitude and response.
That's a bold statement,
It is.
especially
Yeah.
considering the context of, Frankel's experiences in the camps.
Right.
How does he justify this idea of freedom in such a seemingly hopeless situation?
Well, Frankl argues that even when everything else is stripped away, our possessions, our loved ones, even our physical freedom, we still have the freedom to choose our inner world.
Okay.
Our thoughts, our beliefs, our values.
It's like even when we're imprisoned,
Yeah.
our minds can still be free.
Exactly. And that freedom, that power to choose our attitude,
Yeah.
that's what ultimately determines our experience of life, even in the face of, unimaginable suffering.
This is incredibly powerful stuff.
It is.
It's making me realize that I have a lot more control over my happiness and sense of meaning than I often give myself credit for.
That's a common realization for many who engage with Frankl's work.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we're not simply victims of circumstance,
Right.
but active participants in creating our own meaning.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Frankel's theory of logotherapy, his observations of those psychological stages prisoners went through in concentration camps, the three paths to finding meaning,
Yes.
and now these three steps for actually achieving a sense of meaning in our lives.
Yes.
What strikes me is how practical Frankel's approach is.
Ah.
It's not just theoretical mumbo jumbo.
Right. Yeah.
It's about taking concrete steps to shift our perspective and reclaim our power.
That's one of the most compelling aspects of Frankl's work. It's deeply philosophical, yes, but it's also rooted in real-world experience,
Right.
and offers tangible tools for personal transformation.
This is definitely a deep dive. I'm going to need some time to process.
But make your time.
Yeah. But before we move on to part two, are there any final thoughts you want to leave our listeners with?
Yes. Remember that the search for meaning is a journey, not a destination.
Okay.
It's an ongoing process of exploration, growth, and transformation.
Yeah.
And it's a journey that each of us must, undertake for ourselves.
Well said. We'll be back in part two to explore some more specific examples of how Frankel's principles can be applied in everyday life.
Sounds good.
And delve a bit deeper into the critiques and limitations of logotherapy. It's going to get even more interesting. Welcome back to our deep dive into Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. In the last part, we started to unpack Frankl's theory of logotherapy,
Right.
and his three paths to meaning.
Yes.
Are you ready to explore those paths a bit further?
Absolutely. Remember, those paths, meaningful action, experiencing life's richness, and self-transcendence,
Right.
they're not just like abstract concepts. They offer tangible ways to actually cultivate meaning in our lives.
Right. In part one, we discussed how Frankl encouraged depressed patients to find purpose through volunteer work.
Right.
Their symptoms often improved when they focused on helping others.
Exactly. Their sense of meaning, it became a powerful antidote to their despair.
Yeah.
Frankl believed that this principle could be applied, far beyond clinical settings.
Wow.
He argued that anyone could find meaning through, acts of creation, love, or service.
So even simple things like caring for a loved one or pursuing a creative hobby, those can be powerful pathways to meaning.
Absolutely. It's about finding those activities that resonate with your values
Okay.
and give you a sense of purpose that goes beyond just yourself.
Okay.
Think about, what activities make you feel truly alive and engaged.
Okay.
Do they align with your values?
Yeah.
This is what Frankl means by finding purpose in action.
I love that.
Right.
It's not about forcing ourselves to do things we think, should be meaningful.
Right.
But about tapping into what already, feels significant to us.
Exactly.
Yeah. What about the second path? Experiencing life's richness. How do we actually cultivate that sense of wonder and appreciation in our daily lives?
Well, it starts with being present,
Okay.
with paying attention to the small things that we often overlook.
Right.
The warmth of the sun on your skin.
Yeah.
A genuine laugh shared with a friend.
Mhm.
The beauty of a sunset.
Right.
These seemingly insignificant moments, they can
Yeah.
actually be powerful sources of joy and meaning.
I know I'm definitely guilty of getting caught up in the busyness of life and forgetting to appreciate those little things.
I think a lot of us are.
Yeah. I remember reading about how Frankl himself, he found solace in nature,
Yes.
even while, imprisoned in a concentration camp.
He did. Even amidst, unimaginable suffering, he found beauty in a blade of grass or the changing seasons. And he also drew strength from, the memory of his wife.
Right.
Her love was this source of meaning that sustained him through those dark times.
That's both incredibly inspiring and heartbreaking.
It is.
It shows that even in the most dire circumstances, love and beauty can still exist,
Right.
and be a source of strength and resilience.
Yeah.
But for many of us, those big sources of meaning like romantic love or profound experiences in nature,
Right.
those feel hard to come by sometimes.
That's true, but remember, these experiences don't require like grand gestures or exotic travels.
Right.
They can be found in the everyday moments of our lives.
Okay.
It's a shift in perspective, a choice to cultivate a mindful awareness of the world around us and to actively seek out the beauty that's already there.
Right.
It could be as simple as savoring a cup of coffee in the morning,
Right.
or noticing the way the light filters through the leaves on a tree,
Yeah.
or truly listening to a loved one share their day.
Those are great examples.
Yeah.
It's about like training ourselves to appreciate what we often take for granted.
It is.
Okay, so we've talked about meaningful action
Right.
and experiencing life's richness. What about self-transcendence? I think, a lot of people struggle with that idea.
It is a challenging concept.
Yeah.
Frankl describes it as finding meaning through suffering.
Okay.
Not by, seeking out suffering, of course.
Right.
But by choosing our attitude and response when we're faced with unavoidable hardship. It's about recognizing that even in our struggles, there are opportunities for growth,
Okay.
compassion, connection.
So even in pain, we can find purpose by growing, connecting, and helping others.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
It's not about denying the suffering,
Right.
or pretending it doesn't hurt,
Right.
but about finding a deeper meaning within it.
Okay.
It's about using our experiences, even the painful ones, to connect with something greater than ourselves.
Can you give me an example of what that might look like in a real life situation?
Sure, think of someone going through a difficult divorce. It's a painful experience, often isolating.
Yeah.
But what if instead of letting bitterness and resentment, consume them,
Yeah.
they choose to focus on learning from the experience.
Okay.
Becoming a more compassionate and understanding partner in the future.
Right.
They might even find a way to use their experience to support others going through similar challenges.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
It's about transforming that that pain into something positive,
Right.
or at least something that contributes to growth.
Exactly. And that, I think is at the heart of self-transcendence.
Okay.
It's about moving beyond our ego, our immediate needs,
Ah.
and finding a larger purpose in our suffering.
This is definitely making me rethink, my own relationship with challenging experiences.
Hmm.
In part one, we touched on those three steps that Frankl outlines for
Yeah.
for actually achieving a sense of meaning. Can we dive into those a little more?
Of course. Remember those steps. Embracing tension,
Right.
dissipating fear,
Uh,
and the freedom to choose.
mhm.
They're not just for, extreme situations like the ones Frankl faced in the camps. They can be applied to our everyday anxieties and challenges as well.
Right. We talked about how a certain level of tension can actually be, good for us. It
Right.
it keeps us, engaged and striving for growth.
Right.
But we also need to learn how to manage those fears that can hold us back.
You do.
Right. Frankl offers those techniques of paradoxical intention and provisional existence for dealing with fear.
Right. And those techniques can be surprisingly effective, even for common fears and anxieties.
Okay.
For example, let's say someone has a fear of public speaking.
Okay, that's a pretty relatable one.
It is.
Yeah.
So using paradoxical intention, they might actually try to intentionally make a fool of themselves
Oh, wow.
to exaggerate their nervousness, to
Gross.
even, try to make the audience laugh at their awkwardness.
Wait, really? That sounds crazy. Did it actually help?
Believe it or not, it often does.
Wow.
By confronting their fear head on.
Yeah.
They often find that the fear itself it diminishes. It's
Right.
like by embracing the worst case scenario,
Right.
they take away its power over them.
That's so interesting. It reminds me of exposure therapy, where you gradually expose yourself to the thing you're afraid of.
Right.
This seems like a more playful and humorous approach to the same idea.
It is, and what's even more interesting is that this technique has actually been studied
So
and found to be effective for a variety of anxiety disorders.
so there's real science backing this up.
There is.
I'm impressed. Okay, so that's paradoxical intention.
Right.
What about provisional existence? How can we use that in everyday situations?
Well, remember, provisional existence is about mentally projecting yourself into the future.
Okay.
Looking back on your current problems from a point of, well, a greater perspective.
So if I'm like stressed about a deadline at work,
Right.
I can imagine myself, a week from now
Yeah.
having met that deadline,
Right.
and all that anxiety will have just like dissipated.
Exactly. By mentally, placing yourself in that future state of success
Right, so-
or accomplishment,
Yeah.
you reduce the intensity of your current anxiety.
Yeah.
You see your current worries as temporary,
Mhm.
as something you will inevitably overcome.
I can definitely see how that could be helpful.
Yeah.
It's like taking a step back and reminding yourself that your current struggles are not the end of the world.
Right. It's a way to create a sense of psychological distance
Mm-hmm.
from your worries, which helps to reduce their emotional impact.
Okay.
And this all ties back into Frankl's, emphasis on the freedom to choose.
Yes. It's about recognizing that even when we can't control, external circumstances,
Right.
we can still choose our attitude and response.
We can choose to find meaning even in the midst of suffering.
Now, before we wrap up part two, it's important to acknowledge that, Frankl's ideas they're not without their critics.
Right.
Some argue that logotherapy can be, too individualistic.
Yeah.
That it places too much emphasis on personal responsibility,
Uh-huh.
and doesn't adequately address like systemic issues like
Yeah.
poverty or injustice.
That's a valid point and one that's worth considering.
Yeah.
Frankl himself acknowledged that there are limitations to what individuals can achieve on their own.
Okay.
He believed that societal change was also necessary
Right.
to create a more just and humane world.
So it's not about ignoring those systemic issues,
Yeah.
or pretending that everything is solely a matter of individual choice.
Right.
It's about recognizing that interplay between between personal responsibility
Yes.
and the larger structures that shape our lives.
Right. And I think Frankl's work can actually, complement those efforts for social
All
change.
right.
It can empower individuals to take ownership of their own lives,
Right.
to become more resilient in the face of adversity,
Right.
and to work towards a better future,
Right.
both for themselves and for their communities.
It's a both hand situation.
It is.
We can work on ourselves
Right.
while also working to change the world around us.
Yeah.
And that's a powerful message.
Absolutely. And one that's really at the heart of man's search for meaning.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground in part two.
Yeah.
We've explored those three paths to meaning in more depth,
Yeah.
delved into those practical techniques for achieving meaning,
Right.
and even touched on some of the critiques of logotherapy.
We did.
Are you ready to move on to our final part?
I am. I think it's time to pull all of this together and discuss what it means for each of us on a personal level.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've spent the last two parts exploring Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning,
Yes.
a book it's both profound and surprisingly practical, right?
It is.
It challenges us to rethink our relationship with suffering and to actively seek out meaning in our lives,
Yeah.
even in the darkest of times.
Right.
So we've delved into Frankl's theory of logotherapy,
Yes.
those three distinct paths to meaning,
Right.
and even some practical techniques for achieving a sense of purpose.
Uh-huh.
But as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm curious, what are the key takeaways?
Yeah.
The ones that we can apply to our own lives.
Yeah.
What really stood out to you?
Well, one of the most powerful messages for me is that meaning isn't something we simply find.
Right.
It's something we create.
Right.
It's not, out there waiting for us to stumble upon it.
Okay.
We actively cultivate meaning through our choices, our actions,
Right.
and even our attitude towards challenging situations.
That's a powerful shift in perspective.
It is.
It puts the responsibility and the power squarely in our own hands.
Exactly. And it ties back to one of Frankl's core beliefs,
Right.
that even when we're facing suffering, we still have that freedom to choose how we respond. We can choose to find meaning, to grow, to connect with something larger than ourselves.
Frankl's experience in the concentration camps, it showed that even in the most horrific circumstances,
Right.
imaginable,
Yeah.
the human spirit can endure and even thrive if it has a reason to.
And that reason doesn't have to be, grand or extraordinary.
Right.
It can be found in the simplest of things,
Right.
like caring for a loved one, or pursuing a creative passion, appreciating the beauty of nature, or simply, choosing to approach our challenges with a sense of purpose and resilience.
Another takeaway I keep coming back to is the emphasis on taking responsibility for our own lives.
Yes.
Frankl, he doesn't sugarcoat the reality of suffering or
No.
offer easy solutions.
Right.
But he reminds us that we always have a choice.
We do. Yes, he empowers us to recognize that we have a choice in how we respond to life's challenges, that we have control over our attitude and our actions, even when, external circumstances are beyond our control.
And that sense of agency can be incredibly liberating.
It can be.
It's like Frankl saying,
Yeah.
yes, life can be tough.
Right.
But you are not powerless. You have the power to choose your response, to find meaning, to create a life worth living.
I love that.
Yeah.
And it's a message that resonates, just as strongly today as it did when Man's Search for Meaning was first published.
So as we reach the end of our deep dive,
Okay.
I want to pose a question to our listeners.
Uh-huh.
If you were to apply Frankl's ideas to your own life,
Right.
what is one area where you could find more meaning?
Right.
What's one small step you could take today to cultivate a greater sense of purpose?
Perhaps it's by engaging in more purposeful work, or maybe it's about nurturing those important relationships in your life.
Right.
It could be about making time to connect with nature,
Yeah.
or simply, being more present and appreciative of the simple joys that each day holds.
We encourage you to reflect on this question,
Yeah.
to continue exploring Frankl's work,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
and to discover how his insights can help you navigate, life's inevitable challenges,
Yeah.
and create a more meaningful existence.
Remember, even in the darkest of times, the human spirit can find a way to shine.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into man's search for meaning.
That's my pleasure.
We hope you found it insightful,
Uh-huh.
thought-provoking,
Yeah.
and perhaps even a little bit inspiring as